So today our topic is taking care of ourselves and others. And I'm really glad that we keyed off and are starting with this particular topic to have to lean into the fact that we're dealing with a health pandemic. And then as we awaken, and for some of us, we're waking up, and for others, we have been living this experience every day of what it means to be living in a racialized society. And I'm speaking from the US perspective. We live in a racial construct. And for those of us who represent different racial demographics, this has been hard for us. It's been a struggle for us. But as we see and watch and understand that our allies and our actors who are starting to understand the construct of how the US has been designed from a race perspective, coming into this conversation, having this discourse for us, seeking ways to understand what's the work, what's the movement, how can I support, how can I participate? I think for those of us who represent racial identities, it's a heavy lift to not only have to live the experience, but then also be willing to be a part of the solution, while also understanding that we're living in this, living in this construct that is very oppressive, but yet trying to live in liberation at the same time. So there's a lot of complexity here. And that's why having these series are really important, because none of us know what the future answers are, but what we do know is we need to start making change today so that we can change what our future looks like tomorrow, beyond those of us who are doing this liberated work, but for those who come after us. And so if we're going to do that heavy lifting, and we've been doing that heavy lifting, how do we give ourselves permission? How do we give ourselves permission to stop and sit and take care of ourselves? And I pause on purpose. How do we give ourselves permission? And then how do we help each other? How do we give others permission to be able to stop and sit and take care of themselves? Because we have to have hope, we have to have joy, we have to live in love, we have to have compassion. We can't only be in the pain and the anger and the distress. We can't, because we won't change. So today is important. I'm super excited for our panelists, Corinda Rainey-Moore and Dr. Alvin Thomas. I actually will be helping myself, just given some of the work that I've done in helping to speak about this. We're going to be in this conversation together, talking about how can we take care of ourselves and how can we take care of others. And what I want to do is turn it over so that Corinda and Dr. Thomas can introduce themselves and give us an understanding about how you're coming into this space as you think about what it means to take care of yourself and others. So we'll do that brief introduction, and then we'll start. We'll then turn it over to Corinda to start with her piece on what she sees as the work.
Okay, I'll start. My name is Corinda Rainey-Moore, and I come into this work having worked in mental health for 27 years. But I've worked actually inpatient on the inpatient unit at Mendota Mental Health, and I've worked at Journey Mental Health Center for 20 of those years. Both started out as a case manager and then worked my way up to running 3 adult programs for adults with severe and persistent mental illnesses at Journey Mental Health. And having served as board president of the National Alliance of Mental Illness. So that is just a little bit about me, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Alvin Thomas.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Moore. My name is Dr. Alvin Thomas. I am an assistant professor in the School of Human Ecology in the Department of Human Development Family Studies. I am a clinical psychologist by training, and so I focus specifically on positive youth development among African-American youth, and also focusing on the role that Black fathers have to play and are able to play in the positive development of their children. I worked in a number of settings, university settings, and also in clinical settings, working at the Depression Center or the Rachel Upjohn Building at the University of Michigan, where I received my training.
Well, we definitely have some knowledgeable, experienced people here today. So I'm really appreciate that you all have taken some time to be able to talk with us about what we need to be thinking about. So Corinda, did you want to queue up and share with us what you've been seeing and understanding in terms of what we need to be thinking about in terms of taking care of ourselves and others?
Well, in terms of what I'm seeing, I just want to say that mental health is a big part of what I'm seeing. There is so much going on with mental health. And one, because folks are feeling much more isolated now than ever. Folks have been having a lot of losses due to this pandemic the last 6 months. And some of those losses have been loss of relationships with friends that they didn't get closure on. Some of it is the unfortunate passing of loved ones during this time. And so there's been a lot of that. And so one of the things that I wanted to actually bring up is really how we even talk about mental health issues. Because for me, I like to say mental wellness, because I think when you think about wellness, to me, mental wellness, that entails three things. That entails your mental health, your physical health, and your spiritual well-being. And so, and I say wellness because how we think and what we believe affects how we feel about mental health. And so for me, it is really saying that it is okay to not to be okay. And I say it's okay not to be okay because we all go through some stuff, and that going through stuff is part of life. And there's really no shame in saying that you're not okay. So for me, your mental health doesn't define you. There is more to you than a diagnosis, but you have to be able to take care of your mental health the same as you do your physical health and your spiritual health. They all take time and they all take work. And taking care of your mental health is a process. It's not a marathon. And the way that I look at it is, if you don't have your mental health, it's very difficult to do anything else around that. And even the subject that you brought up, Annette, in terms of being able to help others, you can't really help others if you're not able to help yourself. And you really need to have your mental health well in order to be able to help yourself. So for me, that old saying that in the airport, which we hear a lot, is put on your oxygen mask first. That is because you can't pour from an empty cup. Caring for yourself is an act of survival. Mm-hmm. It's not selfishness, it's an act of survival. This means you have to take pauses, and whatever those pauses might be for you, because that pause or that timeline for that pause is not going to look the same as your friend or your family member. It is really determined by you and what you need. And what I'm going to say about that is that if you can't figure out when you need to take a pause, the body, which is where that physical health come in, has a way of doing it for you. It will slow you down when you don't want to. And I know that it's hard for some of us to take pauses. I'm one of them. I'm just putting it out there. I'm working on it, but I'm not perfect at it. So admittedly, that's something that I'm working on. But this taking a pause also means that you have to be able to ask for space that you need. And sometimes that space is away from folks that you might love and care for, just so you can have some time to yourself, which allows you to do what I call the 4 R's: relax, reflect, rejuvenate, and reframe. And I say reframe, and all of these things come into play with your spiritual health as well. And so when I say all of those things, because you have to, like I said, slow down, which means sometimes you have to relax and do nothing. Sometimes you have to reflect so you can have some perspective on where you've been and then where you're likely to go. You also need to figure out, what are those things that are working for me, and what are those things that aren't working for me? And those things that aren't working for you, if they're not working for you, why are you keeping them around? I was on a panel I was on a Zoom conference with the Black Women's Wellness, and one of the presenters there, her comment really struck a chord with me when she said, if you're not changing it, you're accepting it, right? And if it's not working for you, then why are you accepting something that's not working for you? Because really, if it's not working for you, think about the harm that it's doing to you mentally, physically, and spiritually by hanging on to that. So with that, it's like you don't need to be afraid to ask for the space and time that you need in order to take care of yourself. And that means not feeling guilty. Because remember, sometimes in order to make space, you have to say no. And no is a complete sentence, right? and take the space as often as you need. And nobody knows that better than you in terms of how much time you need to take, when you need to take those spaces, how often you need to take those spaces. So you are the best determination of that. And like I said earlier, if you can't figure it out, your body will figure it out for you. And by taking care of yourself, it allows you to be able to pour into others. Helping others is who we are as human. Is part of our humanity, is in our DNA. However, helping others should not be to the detriment of your own self. And I say that because when helping others, you need to think about what resources you have to offer, what capacity you have for helping other folks. And in some cases, you may not be able to be the right one to be able to help people. And that's where you then utilize your resources that you may have to offer up those resources, to be able to share those resources so that they can still get the help that they need. What I'm going to say with that is that if you're not the one to help them, and meaning that you don't have the capacity or you don't have the skill set or the tools to be able to help somebody, the least you can do is to hold hope for people. And sometimes you have to hold that hope when folks cannot hold that hope for themselves until they can. So for me, that also means being able to help others also means that we have to sometimes put our devices down, take pauses and breaks from those. And again, that really depends on you. For some people, that might mean that you're taking pauses from social media and some of those other technical devices every day. For some people, they pick a month and a time where they're saying, we're just going to be off of social media for 30 days. So whatever worked for you, nobody has the same journey or the same story. So don't rely on what's working for other people to work for you, because that may not be your journey. The other thing that I will say is it's really important that we really share our own personal stories with mental health. And that we share those stories, one, because when we share the stories, we own it ourselves. And once we own it, nobody else can take that away from us, and nobody can threaten us with it. Because I think that's one of the reasons why people don't often get help, is because of the stigma that's associated with mental health. But if you take your story and own it and share it and talk about it, more people will start talking about it. More people will start sharing their stories, and then more people will start receiving the help that they need, because there's really no shame in needing help and asking for help. For me, I like to think about asking for help as a strength versus a weakness. Some people think that they don't ask for help because they think it's a weakness. But when I think about all of the effort that it takes for you to go to somebody, to put yourself in a position to be vulnerable by asking for help, not knowing what the response is going to be, not even knowing if the person could actually help you, that takes a lot of strength and courage to be able to do that. So I would encourage folks to not be ashamed to ask for what they need and to seek the help that they need. And when doors don't always open, because sometimes we know that folks don't always get into those services, Don't stop. Keep pushing until you get into the services that you need. Think about your mental health in the same way that you think about your physical health, because if you go to the doctor and one doctor doesn't work out, that might be the same when you are seeking help from somebody who is working in the mental health field. That person and you may not connect. And so it may not be a good fit, but that shouldn't prevent you from still seeking this help that you need by keep knocking on doors until you find the right person that can provide what it is you're looking for. And I'll just say, because in mental health, as well as a lot of the other health arenas, there's not going to be folks of color. A lot of them. There's some, but there's not a lot. You can probably count them on your hands. And so just know that may not be an option, but that doesn't necessarily mean that just because somebody doesn't look like you, they're not able to help you. Because there are some people that are able to provide culturally competent services, even if they don't look like you. The other thing that I want to also talk about is, when you're thinking about mental health, one of the reasons I wanted to reframe it to mental wellness was because language use is very important. And how we frame it is also important. How we frame it, destigmatize the illness. It also encourages people to get the help that they need. So I wanted us to think about that and to work towards that. And in terms of your physical health, what I'm going to say is that physical health is very important to your mental health. And you will see it, and they go hand in hand, because if your mental health isn't well, you start experiencing symptoms of physical health, and the vice versa. If you're not doing what you need to do to take care of your body, you start, your body start breaking down, and you start experiencing stress. You start experiencing all these other diseases that we know is particularly prominent, particularly in folks of color. And those things can be eliminated by at least doing 10 to 15 minutes of exercise per day, whether that's walking in your house or walking outside, going to a gym. You can do all kinds of things to do that. The last thing that I'll say is, in terms of your spirituality, do what works for you. For some people, that may mean prayer. Prayer works. For other people, that may mean doing some meditation, some yoga, in that sense. But what I will say is that prayer works for a lot of things, but sometimes prayer alone is not enough to address the mental health needs that folks encounter. And so there's nothing wrong with doing both. And in a lot of cases, you can also find folks who are in alignment with your spirituality. And even if they're not in alignment, they can still practice culturally competent services despite not being in alignment with that. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Alvin Thomas. And I just want to thank you, Mary Beth and Annette, for having me.
Absolutely. And before Dr. Thomas gets started, I just want to let people know how we framed today's session. So first, I shared some quotes with them, and I think these are pretty powerful. Audre Lorde says, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." So when Corinda said, "Caring for yourself is a form of survival," right on, right? And then also another quote that I offered up was from the NAP ministry, which says, "Rest is a form of resistance because it disrupts and pushes back against capitalism and white supremacy." And so rest is liberation, right? So it's important for us to think about that. So what these wonderful panelists did is they used those quotes, and then that was aligned with some questions, which was to really give all of you who are listening and watching some ideas about what you can do to take care of yourselves. You know, what should that look like? How can you ask for, you know, self-care? What will that look like? How do you ask for that space and grace? What are some examples of what practicing self-care looks like? And then to the point of how you help others or how you don't help others because you need to rest and for your own self. Totally hear that. These were the questions that we put in front of the panelists so that we could give some real meaningful content for all of you to digest and really work with. I'm super excited to hear Dr. Alvin Thomas share with us from his perspective how he sees the work of taking care of ourselves and how we can demonstrate that rest is a form of resistance. So with that, Dr. Thomas, floor is yours. Oh. And don't forget to unmute yourself.
And I'm just on mute.
It's amazing how often we forget to unmute ourselves. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So thank you, Mary Beth. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for allowing us to be able to have this discussion. And everything Corinda Rainey-Moore mentioned, in one way or another, I'm going to end up falling over it, saying it again in different ways. But I think at the core of it is recognizing that our emotions are important, our self-care is important, and our mental wellness is also extremely important to this work. If this work has to be done, if this work has to continue, we have to be present to make sure that that work happens. We have to be healthy to make sure that work happens. And so every so often I'm reminded of this wonderful woman who pretty much, in my mind, has just given this most powerful statement to us, which is reclaiming my time. I think we need to understand that we're doing these hard things. We're engaging this really difficult work in what I think of as a pandemic trifecta. We're in the context of COVID-19, the Black Lives Matter and violence against African Americans, people of color, and there's also this weird political space that we're sitting in, and those three large issues loom really overwhelmingly across the spectrum of age, genders, all kinds of identities, and have significant impact, sometimes in ways that we're not even aware. I think often we're concerned about the immediate things that are conscious to us and how they're affecting us, but we're often not aware of these unconscious effects that these significant stressors are having on our well-being. So when I think of the idea of what exactly it means and what it looks like to take care of ourselves and how I myself do that, I think automatically, I remind myself automatically that self-care has to be deliberate. It's like taking medicine. You don't take medicine by accident. There's a deliberate plan for taking medicine. And in much the same way, self-care has to be deliberate, but it does not have to be complicated. And so I think of two huge factors that often underpin psychological issues, and that's anhedonia and behavioral limitation. And anhedonia is the loss of pleasure in things that used to bring us pleasure. And so when I think of trying to combat the potential development of anhedonia or losing pleasure in things that we found previously pleasurable activities, I say go back to doing those things. Go back to doing the things that made you smile, the things that made you laugh. Go back to being silly. Go back to doing the things that brought you joy. I was just reflecting over the weekend about when was the last time I really laughed. And I realized I had not laughed in so long. And I mean like a deep, full belly laugh. I had not had one of those in so long. And it made me realize how much I was continually giving and not replenishing myself. With regard to limited activity, often we're at work, we're walking around the building, we're walking to and from offices, we're walking to the supermarket, we're doing things, we're always moving, or we're out watching the sunset in these last few days of quote unquote summer and fall, and wondering what I'm preparing for the cold, dark days of winter. And we're out enjoying ourselves in the remaining sunshine. But because of these three massive stresses, we found ourselves secluded indoors, often sometimes by ourselves or with others. I say go back to walking, even if walking means walking around your apartment. And I've started doing that, where I will run around my apartment for 15 minutes. It feels a little bit weird, or at least it felt a little bit weird, almost like I was a hamster on a wheel. But I started feeling the difference because I was essentially moving my body and causing the gears within my body to start moving again, as opposed to stiffening. My knees were feeling different. My arms were feeling different. My whole body was feeling different. I was beginning to sweat. I was beginning to actually have blood flowing in a much more vigorous fashion. So jump, exercise, dance, twerk, bike, move your body in whatever way you need to do that's both pleasurable for you and also gives you space to be able to engage in that behavioral activation, this movement of the body. But how often should you do that? And I think Corinda definitely touched on that. Ms. Moore definitely touched on that. Listen to your body. Pay attention with regard to mental wellness. Pay attention as well to your moods. If you found that your mood is low for multiple days within the week or multiple stretches within the week, then your mental health is being compromised. You are drawing on a reserve of energy that will eventually become depleted. That is the time to start deploying coping mechanisms. And so go back to those first things that I talked about. Go back to engaging in physical activity. Go back to doing some of those pleasurable things that made you smile and laugh and be silly and made you feel good about yourself. Identify, take time every day to take stock of your mood. Where is your mood? Are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Where do I feel? 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. How many 9s have I gotten this week? How many 5s have I gotten this week? Have I spent most of my days during the week at a 5 or below? If that is the case, then I need to stop. That is a message from my body telling me that I need to stop and take care of myself. I need to pour back into myself. Now, I think people have this difficulty of wanting to ask for help or finding it difficult asking for help. Because, oops, I think I missed my next slide. There we go. People have this difficulty wanting to ask for help because often, at least in the society that we live, this very strongly capitalistic society, this white supremacist built society, that we're told that it's weak to need help. You should be able to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And so sometimes we think to ourselves, if I need help, if I have to ask for help, it says something about me that I'm maybe not as strong as I thought I was. And maybe I don't deserve to be in the spaces that I occupy because I'm not strong enough to overcome these things. And I say, much like what this artiste says, to hell with weak and strong. Do what lets you be you again. The real you, the authentic you, the you that brought you to this space doing this work. Do what makes you that person again. Do what frees you to do that work again. Be kind to yourself first before you can expect anyone to be kind to you. Be kind to yourself first before you can expect anyone to be kind to you. I found myself using media to create space for myself. So I realized that if I did not schedule space for self-care, it wasn't going to happen because I moved so much on schedule that I would move from one meeting to the next, to a class, to work, to something else. And in that space, there was no time for me. And so I kept asking myself, where is Alvin in all of this work? And then I said, you know what? I need to find some time for myself. So I scheduled breaks where I said, this is a walk break. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go to one of the lakes and just look out and just enjoy the sun, enjoy the sunset. I'm going to just walk around the neighborhood. I'm going to go walking down to the supermarket and get something. Or I'm going to cook something that I really like to eat. Or I'm going to run around my apartment or exercise. And I noticed that if I put it in my schedule on my calendar, it happened. And I was now able to hold other people to it, because then I can say, no, I can't meet with you during that time because I have another appointment. Nobody needs to know what my appointments are. That's all you need to know, that I have an appointment. The appointment is with me. And when I do work with other people, they are important, and I keep that appointment. When I'm ready to do work with myself, I have to remind myself that I am also important, and I have to keep my appointment with myself. Set the standard or the expectations for how you want people to respond and interact with you. It may be weird at first, but others will eventually get it and will follow it. So for example, I set boundaries for my emails. I shut down my email at 5 or 6 p.m. and there's no response to that email until the next morning at 8 or 9 a.m. On the weekends, on Friday afternoons, I shut down my email at 5 p.m. and you don't get a response from me until Monday at 9 a.m. One of the things that I found really useful was this Boomerang app, where when somebody tried to reach me outside of those email hours, outside of those work hours, they would get an automatic response that told them that my inbox was closed. And so I wouldn't even get an email from them. My inbox was closed until such and such a time. And eventually what I found happening was that people started following that. They would try to rush to get an email into my inbox within the boundaries that I had set for them. And I found that one, they were respecting my time, and two, if they missed it, then they kept missing it until they figured out how to respect my time. Three, it also freed me from the expectation that I needed to respond to something that they were sending or telling me. How do we help others? So we've talked about helping ourselves. How do we help others? Well, we're going to go right back to it. We help others by being around to help, which means taking care of yourself. The first way to help other people is to help yourself, to make sure that you are healthy and available to do that work. Also, when people are coming to you for help or you're reaching out to people to help, let them tell you what they need from you or what they want from you, rather than assuming that you know what they want. So somebody comes and tells you, I have to share this thing with you. Ask them once they're done sharing, how is it that I can help you with this? And it may well be that all they need is a listening ear. But sometimes we're so gung-ho on trying to help that we listen and then we try to offer assistance that they're not asking for. And so we're doing additional work, additional lifting that was not even necessary or requested. So let people tell you what they want from you. Ask them what it is that they actually want from you. You can't also be everything to everyone. So refer out. There might be somebody else who's better at a particular thing than you. Refer that person refer whoever is coming to you for help or whoever you think is needing that support to that other network. Delegate that support, that help. Each of us is great at something else. We're not all great at everything. And as far as community, reach out to your friends. Friends are sitting by waiting just for a note that says, hi, I was thinking about you. Hello, how are you doing? I was praying for you. What's up with you? How are things going? Engage community. Enjoy community. We are physically distanced, but we have a choice to not be socially distanced. We can remain connected even while we are physically distanced. Oh, thanks. That's all I have for us for now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. I love that a couple things that you said, being silly, laughing, finding joy, like going back in your memory file and just saying, bring that back up to the present. That's so important. And then I think also being around to help. You know, if you put that mask on yourself, then you can be around to help others. And of course, reminding us that just because we're physically distant doesn't mean that we have to be socially distant. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Each of you are just knocking it out of the park with, you know, just information that can really help. I want to bring in Precious Woodley. She was at, did this piece for us the last time in June. And she's one of the reasons, along with the rest of this panelists, why we wanted to do this again, because people wanted us to dig in more. You didn't give us enough. So we're really hoping that you can give us some more tonight. And if you can just, you know, open up with, let us know who you are, Precious, tell us about yourself, and then share with us what you've been doing and what you've been sharing in terms of how people need to take care of themselves and what are some ways carefully we can take care of others too.
For sure. Thank you so much, Annette. So my name is Precious Woodley. I'm the director of the Oregon Youth Center. I have previous experience in being a director as well as in administration within the Madison area as well. I am a part of the Dane County Trauma Informed Care Committee, as I have a strong passion about getting to the root of the trauma to understand the behaviors of our students. And in supporting our students, we have to support families holistically. So this is definitely an area that is near and dear to me in regards to making sure that you're taking care of yourself to be able to take care of other people. And that brings me to my first point, which I have three. And my first point is it starts with you. Everything in regards to self-care starts with you. I definitely think it's right within the name, but then it's also right within recognizing that it starts with you. And with it starting with you, asking yourself questions out loud. For example, what are your triggers? Or in your case, it would be, what are my triggers? And speaking these things out loud, it's definitely okay to speak out loud because everybody is a different type of learner as well. And when it comes to understanding and comprehension, you want to be able to meet the need and meet your needs. And so speaking out loud, what are the triggers? What makes me happy? What makes me sad? And being able to identify those different areas of your life will be able to bring you to, okay, how can I combat them or how can I support them is a better, I would say, trauma-informed word to use. And so how are you able to support the different areas of your life that are triggering you, whether it's different areas or whether it's those small things that happen within your everyday work life? How are you able to get through that? And from that list, I have created a list of things that I go through, that I have encouraged my staff to go through as well, to be able to ensure that you find the time within the day to be able to support yourself. And so those different things could be something small as to something as big as going on a vacation. And so, for example, deep breaths, reaching out to your fellow staff, is definitely beneficial, but I would definitely say in a professional manner, more of a venting matter versus a complaining matter. So you want to be able to, I think that Dr. Alvin definitely honed in on being able to, when you're venting, not having more of a proactive, like a listening ear, active listening versus assuming the support that one needs. And so you want to make sure to be able to lean on others, but leaning on others in a strategic manner as well. Taking 15 minutes to yourself, if that's allowed within your workday. If it's not, I definitely think that that's a conversation that should be had with your superiors. There should be self-care breaks throughout the day to be able to support your mental well-being, to be able to holistically support you as a person. Also get moving, continuing to stay moving, whether it's exercise, whether it's a small walk around the office. For me, sometimes it's as small as wiggling my toes within a meeting that is helping me to get through those different trigger moments. So you want to make sure to do what's best for you. Also, as small as get moving, fidgets are a lifesaver. Whether it's something as small as you taking some paper in between your fingers to something as large as a fidget spinner. So definitely making sure that you, if you don't have the tools and the resources at your workspace, that's definitely something that you all are reaching out for to be able to support your workspace, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's in your personal workspace or in a large group setting. Also getting into nature. Whatever the form of nature may be for you. Sometimes rainstorms are very calming, whether it's the music for people, but then also something very calming could be an ocean. So making sure whether it's something you're listening to, as far as something you're, it's a visual picture. So I have, whether your setting is very calming as well, that's something you want to make sure to hone in on. So your setting is very, very, it's very influential to your feeling of the day. Also, disconnecting from technology, that's a huge one. We so often we vent on social media, but then also social media gives so much back to us, whether it's positive or negative. So you want to, you know, making sure you're taking time out of the day. Sometimes I take whole days just to check out, to be able to check in with yourself. Also reflecting on the little things, making sure you're celebrating those small wins throughout the day, those small moments throughout the day. A lot of times we say, oh, I had a bad day. Okay, did you really have a bad day, or did you have a couple hard moments throughout the day that you were able to surpass, and now it's overall a good day? So again, celebrating what's right in each day. Making sure that you find a comfort kit, whatever that may be. If it's something a little like small loveys or small fidgets, or something that makes you feel safe and secure, whatever that small thing may be, making sure that you have that wherever you go. Again, taking care of you to ensure that you can take care of somewhere else. And the last thing is pampering yourself. You always want to make sure that you can take some time for you, whether it's something as simple as, you know, getting a facial, to something as simple as polishing some nails, whatever the case may be. You want to make sure to be able to support you where you are, as well as making sure that your finances can support that as well. So again, these can all be things that can be costly, but then also some things that could be some do-it-yourself tactics as well, which could also be another form of stress relief if you're putting these ideas together for yourself. My second point is it's okay not to be okay. I don't think we say that enough within the fields that we work in. It can definitely be a bias or a stigma around mental health support. And I definitely think it needs to be set aside. As in the stigma needs to be set aside, because the trauma is real. The stressor within work are real. The stressors in our everyday life are real. And so we want to be able to take care of ourselves. With identifying that it's okay not to be okay, we have to identify where our emotional intelligence is within that. And so understanding where your self-management skills, your self-awareness skills, where those are to be able to support your social awareness and social interactions. A lot of times when you interact with someone and there is a negative response, you are not the person that triggered that person. It could be an underlying reason. And so understanding, like if my emotional intelligence is low that day, then I would be reactive versus being proactive about it, and understanding that everybody is carrying an invisible backpack. And so understanding that, that will be able to support your mental well-being by not taking on the energy of others. It'll also be able to help you to be able to support others where they are, because they may not even know that their responses are triggering others. And so if your emotional intelligence is there, it essentially supports others within your workspace and others you're communicating with overall. Also, daily check-ins and self-affirmations are huge. Those self-affirmations, I strongly encourage you to say them out loud. There are different things that I say each morning, whether it come from prayers or meditation, whatever may have you in regards to what you feel like you need to meditate on. I definitely feel like taking that time for yourself and checking in with you. How's your day going? I even have a midday check-in sometimes, and I just have to tell myself, like, okay, I have to take a pause in order to get through the rest of the day successfully, because again, I got that invisible backpack that I'm taking on to the next part of my day. And so how can I have my moment, identify my moment, but then identify how I need to get out of that to be successful for myself and essentially it's successful for everyone around me and those that I'm communicating with. My last point would be if you need a battle buddy. I received that from my pastor as I attend Mount Zion Church. Battle buddies are somebody that is in the fight with you. Somebody that identifies or someone who has been through the fight that you're going through. And I don't necessarily want to say fight. I would say been through the experience that you're going through, as we don't want to look at work as a fight. We definitely want to ensure that that experience is being nurtured by a mentor or a role model. Mine is a past supervisor. And so it's always good to have those more experienced influences who's able to see the perspective that you can't see. I think it's good for not only encouragement, but then also it also is able to help you to stay accountable in the areas that you need to grow on. So in all, I definitely think like you take all of what you need within self-care, and when you consistently and intentionally be mindful about taking care of yourself, you are essentially helping others overall. And so being able to help others, I would say having an active listening ear has definitely gone a long way in supporting others. Some people just want to vent, like just want to be heard. Other people are looking for a solution. Other people are looking for that person to say, it's okay not to be okay. I think it's kind of like a word of mouth thing that has to, continue to get out within the world that we live in to understand that it's okay not to be okay. And identifying that, I am a strong believer of therapists. And I think that they are there for a reason. They are put there for a reason, whether it's some one-on-one support, whether it's some group support. I definitely feel like when you meet a therapist and you build a relationship with that person, that is definitely a non-biased perspective that is able to support you and to help you to figure out what your triggers are, coping mechanisms, as well as the steps to be able to support you through the experiences that you are going through every day. So in all, re-identifying your why and walking in your purpose is what we are doing every day. And so I always say, if nobody's going to, if I don't do it, who will do it? But I also have to remember that if I don't take care of Precious, I can't be Precious the director. I can't be Precious the mom, Precious the daughter, and so forth. But it all starts with me. And because I identify that it all starts with me, I feel like I definitely have more successful work days. So if there's a recipe to be able to get through our everyday work day, I would definitely say it's okay not to be okay. And remember to take time for you.
I'm sorry, I gotta clap. I'm just like, this paper is like ridiculous. I started writing notes like on the sides because each of you just knocked it out the park. If for all of you listening or for all of you watching after the fact, this was phenomenal. Like I have some real structural solutions here on how I can really think about taking care of myself. And the points of view in which you each came from was beyond amazing. Thank you so much. Wow. I'm seriously, I'm not lying. I'm like really feel rich in terms of just what to think about. This time is really hard for people. And I think they need to grab on to ideas that get them to where they need to go. Whew. So
this time frame even makes us emotional because I'm very much so a people person, and so I'm like, I want to touch, I want to hug. Like that's something that keeps me going as a person. And so making those intentional efforts, even in virtual meetings, to, if you can pause and give yourself 5 seconds to take a stretch, take a walk around the table. This is a new way of life for all of us. And so I really think it's really important to ensure, like I said, whether it's those small things of wiggling toes or finding something you can fidget with, it would definitely be helpful to you. We also have to be mindful of, like, for example, our posture and where you're sitting and where our workspaces are. Like, all of those small things will make a big impact in the long run as to how we're making sure we're taking care of ourselves to be the best people that we can be.
And I would agree that there are small things, even in these types of meetings, you can do little check-ins, and those check-ins really go a long way with, before you even start the meeting, let's just do a quick check-in, because folks actually need that, and it actually gives people a chance to connect with other folks outside of what our day-to-day tasks are or our work duties are, to just hear what so-and-so is doing, because we don't have that ability to be in the space where we can enjoy each other's company and sit down and socialize. But I want to also remind us that, as Dr. Alvin said, that social distance, they say social distance, but it's really shouldn't be titled social distance. It should be titled physical distance, because that's really what they're asking us to do. But in a lot of ways, we have been isolating and social distancing from even folks without, even thinking about it, but even picking up a phone, having a phone conversation with somebody that you haven't talked to in a while. Or even in my own family, we've set up Zoom meetings, which my mom is like 83 and she's on a Zoom meeting with us so we can actually connect, because we can't go to where she is because of health issues that she has, but we don't want to jeopardize her health any further than it is. So we keeping our distance, but even being on Zoom with my mom, just talking, being able to talk things through goes a long way. The other thing that I want to say is that sometimes people bring their issues to us, and we have a tendency to take on their issues. Their issue is not our issue. So I'm not claiming nothing that's not mine. I'm just not, because I'm not carrying that with me and I'm not carrying it in my body. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to help folks. But when you say that you're feeling some kind of way because of what I said or what I did, something about what I said triggered you in ways that I don't even have any knowledge of in a lot of ways. And so for me, I don't claim it. And I will apologize if I did something wrong and offensive, but sometimes we're taking on stuff that has nothing to do with us.
Right. So some questions came in, but I'd like Dr. Alvin Thomas to have sort of like a reaction, and then I'd like to queue up some questions that came through.
So I teach at the University of Madison, and every day whenever I start my class, I make sure I leave either a class meeting or a lab meeting. I start off with a grounding and a deliberate reminder to the students that this is a very different space that we're in, that this is not normal. And so students will tell me, oh, I'm sorry, I signed into the meeting 2 minutes late. And I'm like, that's fine, that's fine. And I think we have to deliberately stop ourselves and extend kindness to others in a very deliberate fashion. Extend kindness to others, excuse me, and also extend that same kindness to ourselves. So sometimes you might get into a meeting 5 minutes late because you had to go to the bathroom for the previous meeting. And I think we're often so caught up with these expectations of normality in a very non-normal space that we need to deliberately stop ourselves from that. With regard to the point about social distancing versus physical distancing, I think for some reason, people, I don't know where it came from, but we automatically had this automatic response in a large scale across the country that because we were told to be physically away from each other, that automatically meant that we couldn't be socially connected with people. And I mean, this is even for people who are miles away from us, who we were not physically connected to in the first place. So I had friends all the way in New York that I used to call all the time. And then suddenly we're physically distanced and I don't call them as often. And like, how does that even make sense? And so I had friends, family, drive up from Ashland, Wisconsin last weekend. Last week, a 5-hour drive, just so we could just hang out in a park and have lunch. And we were about 8 feet apart. And we connected, we talked about stuff. We said, I love you. We had our own individual meals, and we cried as we separated. Mm-hmm. But we also made plans to have dinners together, to show each other's meals, to play card games. I love board games, to play board games on the computer, to find ways of connecting, even though we physically can't be together. And I think that's what we need to make. We need to help people realize that there's normality in physical distancing, where the social distancing does not disappear with that.
I think that's a really great point, because we don't want to confuse language, right? And have and then experience unintended consequences that actually exacerbate the pandemic, right? And make our health and racialized and economic issues more powerful than they need to be, right? Like, connection is important, and they can come in lots of different forms. I really appreciate you really making that clear. Here was a really great question that came in that I really would love your perspective on, which is, as somebody who is an ally or an accomplice, or, you know, a person who is wanting to support in trying to take care of others, and if that person that they're wanting to help is a person of color who obviously has different experiences and stresses and traumas that they're working with, how can these allies, how can allies be a help if they don't actually have the lived experience of the person they're wanting to help? And Precious perked up, so I'm going to give her first call at this, and then I'm going to go back around and have Dr. Thomas, and then Corinda, you get to wrap us up on that. So Precious?
Really appreciate this question. Why? Because I think it's definitely, it's research based that it's specifically Black boys and Black girls need to be supported and need those additional supports to be as successful as their white counterparts. And so I think that it's a very important question and very important area. But in my experience, which the question has come up often, I think having that awareness and understanding that no, you don't have the same experience, but everyone has trauma. Everyone has some form of trauma. And so listening to be able to support versus listening, oh, we got to solve the problem, or oh, we got to fix it. When it comes to that support, there needs to be a relationship first. And so I would say first and foremost is a relationship to be able to build trust. If I don't have trust with you, I am not going to share with you that the reason why I'm not supporting school activities is because I don't have a car, or we're actually living out of the car and I don't want you to know all of my business. And so those different details come out in conversations when you have a relationship. And so I would say first and foremost, building that relationship. Secondly, being able to listen and being a soundboard for those different families. The different families could be, like I said, an array of families from diversity to social economic statuses, but it could definitely be identified as anybody, but definitely being able to just listen and be a soundboard, and then offering support. But when you're offering support, reiterating what the person said so that they feel validated, but then also that they feel that they were heard, and what exactly was heard is what exactly you're looking to support. So staying in that range of support. Never, I would say, like, when it comes to like reaching, it's like, oh, are you in my business? Oh, are you, like, why are you asking those questions? So being able to explain as to why you're asking the particular questions, but being around the fact of being able to validate, and what you already have in that trusting relationship, that point of entry within that conversation will be easier. And so that's my spiel in regards to being an ally. But then also, even if you have the same experiences as a person, I just think when it comes to those hard conversations and those hard experiences, it all starts with the relationship and then going from there. But always having that list of resources there. I never say I don't know. I say I'm unsure, but I'm definitely going to be with you to be able to help you find the solution to whatever the problem may be.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to answer this question and answer it in, because I think Precious already touched so many points that I would have otherwise touched. So kudos to you, Precious. Thank you so much for cutting down what I need to say. I would say for allies who are wanting to step forward and be resources and be assets in this work, when you step forward, whether you understand or have or share that experience or not, whether you have the background to understand the experience or not, what is most important in your response is that your response highlights the stories of the people whom you are dealing with. So when somebody is before you and they're telling you their story, your response, your presence should highlight their story. You should demonstrate that you believe their story. Don't deny Black boys their tears. Don't deny Black girls, Black boys and Black girls, their tears and their fears. Don't deny Black people their pain and the reaction that comes from that pain. Don't try to tell them how they should respond to the pain that they're feeling. Allow them that space to do that. Stand with them and support them through that.
If I had a mic in my hand, it would be falling.
I think Precious and Dr. Thomas actually talked a lot about what I would say, but what I would also say is that it's important that you listen. And I want to say listen without needing to respond and without being judgmental. Because oftentimes when folks come to you, they're really wanting you to listen, but they oftentimes come asking for help when they already know the solution. And so you cannot tell them what their solution should be, but listen, validate their experiences, validate and acknowledge that that we do have different experiences. And for me, it's not even a matter of culture, because even if we look alike, we might have different experiences anyway. But folks do make, and what I will say is that folks do make assumptions. They make assumptions when they first meet somebody. You make assumptions as people are coming to you for services, and they will make assumptions about you too. And so sometimes those assumptions are real and sometimes they're not, but they are always often made because of our experiences. And so acknowledging and validating those experiences is real. Developing trust takes time. It doesn't happen in a day. And sometimes it really takes months or years to develop trust. But what you have to do is to start where people are. Meet them where they are. If they're distrustful, then acknowledge that there has been stuff in people's life and experiences that have caused them to not trust, right? So acknowledge that. But also recognize that people have solutions oftentimes to their own problems and will come to you because they say they have nowhere else to turn. But what they're really doing is listening to you to see how you are going to validate their experience and how you are going to acknowledge or provide them with resources to be able to deal with the solutions that they come to you for. And it's really not about your having answers, because that's not what people want. People don't want you to tell them what to do. And just like you don't want to be told what to do, other folks don't want to be told what to do. But when you're offering those resources, make sure that they are resources that people have access to. For example, folks will oftentimes say, well, you can just go get treatment at so-and-so. Well, so-and-so the treatment might not be that readily available. There might be a long waiting list. So acknowledge that there are going to be some challenges with some of these resources, because many of them have their own personal challenges. Even though they're supposed to help vulnerable people, there are challenges that come with getting access to those resources. So acknowledging that, but also making sure that what you're offering folks, it is culturally relevant to them also, because that is equally important. But what I will say to you is that what I found, sometimes people come to you and they say that they want to work with folks of color, but what folks really want, even outside of working with folks of color, because if you've been in this community long enough, you know that there's not enough folks of color to work with you. But what folks really want to know is, can you help me? And so really starting with that framework of where the person is from, asking questions for clarification, so you're not making assumptions about who they are and what they need, and listen thoroughly, and then being able to sit with folks in that experience that they're experiencing, and also follow up with people after they've met with you to see where they are, to see that they get access to those resources. Because if they didn't, what can you do to help leverage some of those resources so that people can get in the doors of those resources, knowing that it's not easy. Sometimes you also have to walk with people to the resources. Sometimes and some people say, well, you're holding their hands too much. Well, sometimes everybody needs their hand held every now and then. And so if it means that you have to help people and walk them through the doors so that they can get the help that they need, so that they can be whole, and then contributing members of our community, which is the ultimate goal, is to have everyone be thriving and community members, then you have to sometimes walk with people, hold their hands as they're going to get the resources that they need in order to be self-sufficient and to be able to thrive. And I would also say, the last thing I would say is to really think about how you talk with folks about what's going on with them, because that also plays a part in whether or not folks will return for its treatment and services, because folks are reading you like you are reading them. And then acknowledge that you have to, if they're coming to you and you're a provider, acknowledge what your role is as a provider, what you have to do, so folks know that things are wide open and you're being transparent about that. And so that they know what the process is, they know what to expect, and they also know what your limitations are. So being upfront about all those things, I think, are equally important and will actually impact whether somebody comes back or not.
Well, thank you. Even with adding another deep dive with an hour with really wickedly smart and knowledgeable individuals and panelists, it still feels like we never have enough time for all that we need to know. But what I will say is that each and every one of you provided some really helpful information that I think really gets people moving forward in a real positive, proactive way in terms of thinking about how they can take care of themselves in this space, in this time. There's a couple of things that I want to share with all of you that I want you to think about. So let me do that real quick. First, when we started this project, we put together a beautiful crowdsourced Google Doc that is chock full of information and resources in terms of thinking about how you can be in this movement, not a moment, this movement, and where we're really actively and intentionally trying to disrupt inequity and really thinking about how we can sustain our efforts to do that. And so I really encourage all of you to take a look at that. I wanted to briefly pop it up on the screen so that you can see it, this document, so that you know what it looks like. And of course, what you see is like a hot mess of all the different things that I have. So I'm going to stop sharing because that did not work well. But there's a great Google Doc out there. We put it in the chat. It's been out there online, and we'll share it again. The other thing that we have is we do have also for each of you, we've been saying that if you're going to do this work and you're going to be intentional with this work, you need to have a game plan. And so another document that we prepared is a work plan that helps you think about how do you act. It makes you accountable for what you are going to learn, for what you are going to, how are you going to exert influence? How are you going to support the work and help move other people around you to be able to do this work successfully? How are you going to sustain not only your efforts, but other people's efforts? And again, we started with taking care of ourselves. And so this work plan really makes you accountable in thinking about what is going to be your first action today. What are you going to do to really make sure that you work in all of these 6 areas? And then how are you going to keep the momentum going? So thinking about those actions after that. And then how are you going to embed the change into something that's sustainable and moves forward and carries you forward? So that document is also available as a openware, shareware, as we've been calling it. So I just want to remind you all about that. And then I also just want to say that we are going to have another session. It's going to be on Thursday. And that particular session is going to be exerting influence in our spheres. So how do we influence our family, our friends, our colleagues, our communities, and our networks? And it's going to be on Thursday at 4 o'clock again. And so we're going to have a wonderful group of panelists, just like we did today. And so we really hope that we will see you at that time. There was a poem that I just wanted to read to all of you that's relevant to the self-care, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mary Beth with any closing comments. Hopefully I didn't get in her lane. But this poem that is from the Nap Ministry, and it says this: "My protest is not to let this wicked place steal my joy, my rest, my sleep, my dream space, my love, my pleasure, my life. They don't deserve me. Rest is resistance." So I leave that with you all. Rest is resistance. So take care of yourself and take care of the people that you love around you. And with that, Mary Beth.
Yes, so thank you all so much. This was really powerful, inspiring. It was a wonderful way to kick off our series that we'll be doing this fall. Annette told you about the next event, which is Thursday, but we will have several after that. So just stay in touch with us through the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies Facebook page, which is the main hub for this information. You can reach out to me or Annette directly if you need to for follow-up questions, or even if you're someone out there who would like to participate in one of these. We're drawing upon the wisdom of our community and network, and today our 3 panelists certainly proved the way that we don't have to look very far. We can go to our colleagues and collaborators, and we have a dream team right here for each of these topics in our work plan. The other thing that I would just like to note is that I think through our Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies work, we see that there is power in also having a circle of support for this kind of work. And when we did our first sessions, we did hear from a couple of great folks from Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, and other parts of Wisconsin that were saying, our neighborhood is going to do this. And so I would just love it if people might think about taking that work plan for their own individual commitment to engage, but maybe think about maybe if you can pull together with 2 or 3 people and check in with each other about that. I think we're going to think about how we can do that even at our center with our team. And then we'd love to hear from you about how that's going. This is a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's probably going to go on for the rest of our lives. And what we're really trying to do here is build some tools and muscle for the long haul. And we're all a part of that. So I just want to also thank the Morgridge Center for Public Service. We're on their Zoom account today. They have supported this just 100% from the beginning as one of our host institutions, and our friends there have been wonderful, and some of them are here with us on the call today just participating, probably to make their own plans. And Annette, Precious, and Corinda just want to leave with another expression of gratitude for your wisdom and insights today. So thank you so very much.